Welcome, everyone, to It Tastes Different Gaming Podcast, the podcast with four different flavors coming from four different gamers. I'm your host, Russell Rowe, and I want to welcome my co host, Shane Eisterhold, Patrick Smith, and Nick Irwin.
Hey, Patrick, where can they find us?
Well, the first place you should check out is our website at ittastes.different.com. This is the place where you can subscribe to all of our streams and connect to all of our social media sites. You can also find us on Facebook at It Tastes Different. We're also on Instagram at It Tastes Different PC. And then last but not least is Twitter, where you can find us at It Tastes Diff.
What's on the menu today? We break the fourth wall and introduce the fourth flavor, the bean and cheese burrito, Russell Rowe. In this episode, we discuss Russ's top 5 favorite games and top 5 disappointed games. Russ, take it away.
Well, first off, I want to thank everybody for letting me be a part of this podcast. I've known y'all for quite a while, and I'm glad that y'all intertwined me here, and I'm really excited that I get to discuss some of these things. I was really disappointed that I wasn't able to share this the first time, but man, it's going to be exciting. I'm pretty sure Patrick, who probably knows me best out of everybody, probably guessed a couple of these things. I'm going to give it out to him. I'd like to know from him first, actually from all three of you, which ones do you think may make my worst list and what might make my best list? So Pat, what game do you think, or games do you think will be on those lists?
Well, I think the game that we first started playing together is probably going to be it, which is going to be Star Wars Galaxies. It's going to be on the list for sure. Don't know where, but it's probably going to be pretty close up in the top list. Probably Freelancer is going to be there on your favorites. The disappointments is a little bit harder for me because you're kind of like me. You don't play something that you don't like, so a disappointment is going to be one of those oddball choices. But let's see. So disappointed games, man, that's going to be rough. To be honest, I'm not sure on the disappointed list. It's going to be I bet once you say it, I'll probably realize what's on the list, and I'm like, oh yeah, you hated that game, because most of the time you don't. The games that you don't like are stuff that I don't like for the most part. I'm not going to play Dark Souls or anything like that, but it didn't even make my list of hated games or disliked games. So disappointments, maybe WoW's on there, because WoW was a big one for us, and then it died. Maybe Star Wars Galaxy's on both lists, because, it was great until NGE, and then NGE killed it. I mean, literally, everybody played that game, you and I included, until we went to bed one night and woke up the next morning, and NGE came out, and it was pretty much like, that's the end of it. I'm done. No more. So I think that those are going to be on there. So, the dislikes will probably be a little bit of a shocker for me, maybe not. Shane, what do you think's on his list?
Oh my God, it's Russ. So let's see. I definitely agree with your like. I'm really more trying to figure out his dislike, because we've been playing for a while now, and there's been some turds that he has not liked. So, man, I really can't think of the name of that one that we played. It was kind of a cheap little RPG, top down, saved like crap, played like crap. Oh my God, what name was it?
9 Parchments.
9 Parchments, that's the one.
Yeah.
I
mean, that's a good guess. But I definitely, I'll say now that did not make the list. But I'll give you some credit there. That was a interesting night for all of us, I think, trying to play that one.
Well, I just remember that one specifically because I've never heard those words that you used during the game in that order.
Yeah, it was a rough night.
But yeah, I don't know. We've played some turds over the last several years. So, what about you, Nick?
I agree with you guys as far as the like. I think Star Wars Galaxy is going to be up there in the, towards the top. I think maybe number 1 on his most top 5 favorite games. For disappointments, I really don't know. But if I were to guess, this is a complete guess, Golf with Friends, I think might be on that list.
I think that's on his top 5.
That was Pat's
top 5.
It was Pat's top 5, but I think it's on your list too.
If it's on my top 5, it's because it drove Patrick so crazy. That's the only reason why it's on my top 5.
It'll be in his top 5 phase at that point.
Well, I mean,
number 5.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I think like you guys, I think I want to start off with the disappointments. And I'm saying disappointments. I mean, because there's nothing that I really hated anything more than like ET. But we talked about that in the last podcast, and so really I went in a different kind of aspect and went disappointments. And so, um, and it's really disappointments. Games that were super hyped, super exciting, ready to play, and it just was like, I mean, it was just like Price is Right, wah wah wah, just let down. And so to start off with that list, on my number five disappointment list is a game called WildStar. WildStar was an MMO. It came out kind of a couple years after World of Warcraft. It had a lot of hype to it. Actually, the former members of Blizzard went on to this game to build, I think it was Carbine, and then NCSoft bought them out. And man, there was so much hype around this game. The classes were super cool. Everything just seemed kind of new, but yet familiar. The thing about it is number one, the game came out. There was a lot of buggy stuff to start off. It was just super buggy. Tanks holding aggro was really difficult. The good thing about the game is it did have a true holy trinity, but it was hard to find players that really knew their role. They didn't know how to stay out of stuff because this was a very, I mean, you were penalized. If you stayed in the stuff, you were penalized. You were hurt. And it was just really tough to get along with. What was really difficult too is like it really pumped up this like player housing thing, and it was another moment in that was just kind of like it was just a really disappointing moment when we got the housing, when you got these things. It was just a bunch of like piddly things that it just didn't work out well. So that's my number five disappointment game, was WildStar.
I remember that one. That one we played for only a little while. We didn't play for very long. I think we played and raced to the end, and that was it. Got the player housing and stuff like that. It was buggy. It was an interesting concept, and the classes were pretty boring though. So yeah, it only lasted like 4 years, I think, before it went out of business.
Total. Yeah, before, I mean, I think we played it for maybe 2.5 months, if that, and I was really psyched about it. I really liked, the artwork and everything that went into it. But then when you started playing it, it just didn't do it. So that's my number five.
Yep, typical NCSoft.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and as I was making my list too, I saw myself kind of like focusing in on publishers and stuff like that too. I was like, golly, I mean, like with WildStar, I was going between that and Aeon. I was like, oh, I don't know. I mean, but yet both of them are NCSoft games. So, but anyway, moving on. Number four is Anthem. Anthem is number four. Man, that game. I think the four of us were just so ready to play that game. The gameplay was fun, but then it got very repetitive, and then we found ourselves in another kind of co-op game that it was the same little quests over and over and over. There was UI issues. There were, where are you on the map issues. There were just all these issues that I mean, I think we played that maybe 2 weeks, and here we were waiting, I think, 6 months for that game to come out. So I'm not really going to go into a lot of detail with that one because us as a group have talked about that game quite a bit and have talked about EA's incapabilities with games like that. But that's number four, is Anthem.
I don't think anybody here would disagree.
Yeah, I almost, after I made my decision on You're Disappointed, I thought about that one. I was like, oh, I bet you that's on there.
I mean, that's, I think,
known.
That one there was just, I was really pumped for that one. So, but moving on to number three. This may be not a big surprise, but there's going to be an aha moment for everybody, and that's Star Wars: The Old Republic. I tell you what, I think me and Patrick jeweled for 6 months on that game. It was like, finally we get an update to Star Wars Galaxies, finally. And then during the commercials, there was something that I reflected on. Story-driven MMO. Story-driven MMO. Story-driven MMO. And I'm like, okay, stop telling me that. What does that mean? So we get into the game and we realize what that means. It means leveling is a story, which was great. It was really, that was the only good thing about that game, was the story. Building your character, making the choices of dark versus light. All that stuff was fantastic. And then we got to max level and it was like, crap, what do we do now? There's like 5 dungeons there, and it's the same thing over and over again. Finding trouble with groups, trying to get in there. Tanking was really difficult in that game, especially early on. Now it got better as time progressed, but it did. And then EA sunk their teeth into it, went to free to play. All those things just ruined that game, and really was just truly a huge disappointment because I remember getting that Darth title. I put it up on my Facebook. I was so proud of it, and then I think like 3 weeks later we were done with the game, and it was just sad. So that's my number three.
All you guys and your big Anthem haters. I mean, I like the game. I guess it was a disappointment in that aspect. I really hope with Anthem 2.0 that they revive that game because I like it. But yeah, there's no content. It was hyped to no end. But in my opinion, it was a good game. It just lacked content.
I agree.
So it didn't hold anybody's interest past racing to the end.
Yeah, exactly. That just needed they just need to let BioWare do what BioWare does. They weren't allowed to do it. You can tell by the game that there was a lot of pressure, there was a lot of push, and they didn't give them what they needed to do to make it what it was supposed to have been.
I am really surprised that Star Wars made on there because I mean we played a lot of it, yet the end game was not there. But I'm pretty sure we made one of every character.
We
so
did,
played
but
a lot of it.
we did play a lot of it. But like when I thought about disappointments, it was in the end it was really disappointing because we didn't get into some of that end game content. We got to see those stories. That was a good part of the game, but afterwards there was no follow through on it. There was no continuation. We didn't continue with that, and the more that I reflect back on it, it was just a product of the time. It was kind of like that filler between what Galaxies was and what World of Warcraft was, and it was like because it was Star Wars, it gave more attention. I gave it more attention because it was Star Wars. But when I truly sit down and reflect on it, it was actually a very disappointing game. The game's still alive now. If it was one of my favorite games, I should be playing it still now. At least that's my opinion with it.
Yeah, I mean, the game is basically really driven towards single player, even though it's an MMO. Because even all the little episodes because they're still releasing like episodic events and stuff like that for the
Yep.
game. They're all single player driven, like this is your story type thing. So I mean, yeah, it definitely isn't an MMO. It has MMO aspects, but a lot of the multiplayer stuff's just not there. But yeah, playing Star Wars with friends would have been cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll move on to number two. Number two is it probably might be a surprise to the whole group is actually SimCity 2013 when EA got a hold of it. Man, I was really excited to have that out. Bought it on Steam, installed it. I think the first night me and Patrick got on, I think we waited 4 hours to get on. The connectivity with it was terrible. And then there was not as much customization of the city of the way that you could change things like there was in 3000. It was really disappointing. That was kind of heartbreaking because I love SimCity. I actually haven't played SimCity at all, anything since that day. It broke my heart to see such a fun game to me just butchered and not ready to play. I mean, a lot of my disappointments come from games that are hyped, and not ready at release. They're just not. We've talked about that, I think, to death. But SimCity 2013 was really disappointing to me. I feel like I literally wasted $60 on that game. It was just really disappointing for me.
Yeah, I think it was highly rated when before everybody got their hands on it. I think everybody was rating it really high, and then it came out, and like Metacritic and all these guys dumbed their reviews down. I think it currently sits in Metacritic in somewhere in the 60s, 60%. So
That one came out on Origin, right?
2013.
I bought that copy, so I'm not sure if it's on Origin now, but I bought that a copy originally. I mean, I bought it the day it
I mean,
released.
it's the new SimCity, right? I mean,
Yes.
it was okay.
it's not the newest, right?
No, it's
No,
not the-
13.
It's not the 2013 version. This was the one. This was like SimCity 4. It was supposed to be SimCity 4,
SimCity 4?
kind of. But they called it SimCity. EA got a hold of it and they just rebranded it plain old SimCity. And that's why I said 2013. That one that came out there. SimCity 3000 was really great. I mean, I loved all those, the ones previous to this, but that one killed me on that genre. I even have trouble playing new ones that come out now, the ones that come on Xbox and stuff like that, just because I'm so depressed still after 7 years of that game not being able to play it. So that one was a really big disappointment for me.
Yeah, I have that one. That one is Origin, and that one, compared to the other ones, like I love SimCity 2. It's one of my favorite city builders, and I love SimCity, 2000, SimCity 3000, even SimCity 4. I really liked, and yeah, SimCity was probably the one that I least liked. I still play it occasionally here and there. I mean, they have updated it more and it kind of fixed some of the bad things that would happen, but it's still not as good as the prior versions.
Yeah. Now, I'm gonna kind of put a little bit of excitement in there. Wait for my number one on the worst, but I do want to make a moment here. Just make a little I think y'all kind of did some notable mentions or some honorable mentions. I have one honorable mention for my worst, and that's the Final Fantasy 14, the 1.0, the very first launch. It almost made it on the list, but because they fixed it, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to put it on the list. But the hilarity of that night logging in with Patrick, we were so excited about that game. And I don't think we could even do the first quest because there were so many people bogging down the server and the quests were broke. That very first launch of Final Fantasy 14 was hilarious. So
Yeah.
I thought I'd do an honorable mention on that.
Yeah, that one should have gotten even more of an honorable mention just because. Yeah, I think we tried to play for 2 or 3 hours, and we ran to the first the first quest when you run out of the town, and there was just a line of people. It looked like a line to the women's bathroom at a sporting event.
Yep.
There was just people waiting to kill the NPC mob that spawns every now and then, and people were actually queued for it. They weren't being like jerks and circling the mob spawner. People actually queued for it. My complaint with that game was when they killed it and they relaunched it to Realm Reborn, they charged you again. You couldn't, if you were an original owner, you couldn't come back in.
Yeah, that's like the
Yeah.
double-edged sword.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but
Yeah, I really wanted to watch the event where they killed the server, but I didn't get on to watch them drop the meteor on it. So
they let you come back in because I was the original Realm Reborn owner.
so was I, and I had to buy the game again because when I would log into the MOG station, it would show that I didn't have the account.
Because what you had to do is they had posted a thing. You had to have an active subscription between a certain time period, and then they would give you the game, the Realm Reborn game.
Yeah, so I didn't subscribe. I bought the physical copy of the game, played the first day and couldn't get in, and was just like whatever, and tried a couple more times. But I never paid for a subscription because I could never play. So since I didn't have a subscription, but I paid for the $60 original game, I couldn't come back in and play. I couldn't just transfer my account.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. See, I did. I played through the game and everything.
That's fantastic that the honorable mention there strikes up such a conversation. That's fantastic. A lot of us were a little annoyed with that game, that's for sure. So I'm going to go ahead and move on there to the best list. I'm going to leave that number one on the worst here for just a moment. Best, that I tell you what, there's so many good games. It was really hard to choose, but I think I finally dwindled it down. And in number 5 spot, I think Ghost was probably number 5. I put on here a couple of games, but I really want to also preface this by saying, PS4 standalones have been spectacular. Ghost, God of War, Horizon Dawn, all those are really good, but I think Ghost is my favorite out of that. What a fantastic story. What a fantastic game. I didn't have any of the bug issues at all. Was really the assassination part of it was fantastic. Everything to that game was just great. I mean, kind of being able to customize your look a little bit. I didn't really get the opportunity during the review to say the moment that you went and you kind of got your ghost mode and you chopped off that leader's head right in front of everybody. I got chills down my body. It was just the most awesome thing. I think I actually cheered out loud. Was not expecting it. So when a game does that to me, it's definitely got to be on the top of my list.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anybody here could disagree with that. I think if we'd have played that before we did our tops, that would definitely be on it because I would definitely put that into my top 5 compared to my other list. I think I could probably move something off of there to fit that.
Yeah, it was an excellent game. And so So, Patrick, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, I don't think you'll find anybody in here that disagrees. We all loved that game, and it has
Yeah.
probably a place in our top 10 and maybe top 5 for a lot of us.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to find games that are going to bump it at all. Considering each one of our lists, I think that one is great. So, yeah, I can't talk enough about that game and just how happy that purchase was for me for sure. Moving on to number four, I hate when I am like Shane. It drives me crazy. I love you, Shane, but Final Fantasy VIII is my number four. The switch from seven, the upgrade in the graphics, the storyline was fantastic. Was it a little long-winded on the RPG at times? It was, but the story was so good that it held up during the whole time. I mean, I just remember like the end. I mean, I was actually convinced that I think we died, and I didn't know what was happening, and then next thing you know, it didn't, and it was just like that was probably and to kind of also talk about my gaming life. I mean, that was probably my first really true start to finish RPG. It just so happened that that's the game. I didn't play a lot of the older the Final Fantasies. I was overseas during the time, and so it was a little bit different on the timing for my RPG career. And that one there, it held my attention the whole time. I loved it. I do have the remastered. I haven't gone through yet. I kind of hope they would have done a voiceover, but I heard they didn't. So that'll be a little tough, but we'll see. It's still one of my favorite. It is my favorite Final Fantasy series game. It is, and I enjoyed 10 and I enjoyed 12 a little bit, but that one there really it sticks with me.
Not
I'm
playing the
just
original.
so honored.
Not playing the original. I can tell you the remaster is awesome. Love it.
Yeah.
So I can't play the
Now,
old version now because I'm a graphics snob, so I just have to wash my eyes out with bleach after looking at the old version.
Yeah, it's definitely
it's
difficult.
it's definitely. I do wish, like Russ was saying, I wish they would have done the voiceover change to it. I think, honestly, I think they should do a remake of that one as well. It's just, in my opinion, it is the better of the PlayStation 1 eras. Definitely.
I mean, the Guardian Force, sometimes people like want to complain about the Guardian Force about every time you pull out infrared or something like that, it has to go through that whole little I liked that. I
And you
liked
could,
that I was unleashing it every time. Like it was awesome to me.
yeah, and you could skip that. There was a way to set it up to skip it, if I do remember correctly, on the original.
Either way, I wasn't going to skip it because I loved to see it every time because
Oh,
it was like, oh, y'all about to get it now. I mean, I just like
oh,
some kind,
absolutely.
so that was my number four. Going in number three, this is going to be no surprise. World of Warcraft. World of Warcraft. Even though in the last years they have dumbed down the game, they made it very basic. World of Warcraft is almost nostalgic for me. Getting in there, I mean, I can remember first started playing with a guy named Velnius, as his actual name is Chris, and we were like running through somewhere. I cannot remember where we were. Night Owls at the time. It was like Tristful Glades or something like that. We were running through there, and it was the first time we had flagged ourselves PvP, and it was this epic battle with these guys, and we won, and it was like the most satisfying thing that ever happened, and I mean, I played a druid the whole time through pretty much. I'd try to re-roll something, but I'd always go back to the druid. I mean, if I had to say anything, it would be like, yes, Burning Crusades. Up to Burning Crusades was probably my favorite. Burning Crusades, like being a druid during that time, was very OP. Loved it to death. They started to kind of slowly start dumbing down the gameplay after that, little by little, each expansion by each expansion. And it did get a lot of rinse and repeat type stuff, and that's kind of why I've slacked off on the game. But I still, it will always hold a special place in my heart. 40-man raids, coming down to 20-man and 10-man, and just I don't know. It was Blizzard put together well put that game together very well, if I can speak, and I just enjoyed it so much.
That game had, I mean, yeah, I mean, we played a lot of that game. I have a lot of great memories with that game. Met a lot of great people in my life because of that game online. I mean, there's some. I mean, there's tons of friends and people we've met on that game that they're good, fond memories. I remember half the time just running dungeons with groups of friends that we ran 100 times, but we're just BSing the whole time. I mean, I remember foregoing sleep for that game so that I could stay up. I would go to work leave to go to work at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and then I would go home. I would work till 6 or 7 o'clock in the afternoon and come home and sleep till 1 or 2, so I can run raids and dungeons with a group of friends that we had, and just rinse and repeat that stuff. But made a lot of great. That game has nostalgia for that. The people do that a lot for me because we ran with when we first started playing, ran with Celestial Navigators CN doing 40-man raids and had met great people in that guild, and then moved on to some smaller guilds and smaller groups of friends. And some of them are still friends today. Some of them we don't really talk to a lot now, and then some we've lost. They're no longer with us. But it's the nostalgia in that game is the people. That game has basically turned into a giant conglomeration of friends and people that got to know each other to let's use Dungeon Finder and not talk to people and not hang out with people. So that's kind of why I left. I mean, we have great friends. I mean, you and I have a lot of friends that we still stay in somewhat contact with that game because of that game, I should say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that was number three. Number three, World of Warcraft. Great game, a lot of memories, and that may be part of the reason why it ended up finding itself on my best list was because my fondest memories, some of my greatest times, where some people maybe remember a bar or a pub they went to, and they're like, "Oh, I love that pub," because that was kind of our pub for many years, and we enjoyed it quite a bit. And so this one's going to be a surprise. Number two is going to be a surprise because everybody's thinking it's going to be number one, but number two is Star Wars Galaxies. It ended up at number two, Star Wars Galaxies. I mean, what can I say about this game that you four or you three have not heard from me constantly? I had 3 accounts. I had a dancer doing buffs. I had a doctor doing buffs. I had a Terakasai master swordsman. I had a combat medic at one time and a rifleman. I mean, all that stuff. Player cities, space expansion. I mean, we could go on and on about this game. I don't want to sit here for the next 45 minutes and just tell you why I love this game so much. It was my introduction to MMOs. Some people had like Ultima Online or EverQuest as their introductions. I was a late bloomer when it came to MMOs, and Star Wars was my first one, and what a great game it was. Fond memories of the first time I got on there and literally having to run for like 25 minutes just to get to the town we were going to so that I could get a speeder bike. I mean, who does that now? Who has the patience for that kind of thing now? Nobody does. But by God, I sat there that night and I held that W key for 20 minutes to make sure I could get me a speeder bike.
I remember that they were advertising that we got a city on lock, but we don't have a starport yet, so you got to run. And we were newbies. There's newbies. You don't have a speeder bike. It would have been like a 2-minute to 5-minute run on a speeder bike, but we had to run it because they didn't have a starport yet, and they were trying to get enough people to get a starport or shuttleport at that point.
Then they put starports and shuttleports up, and next thing you know, the shuttleport's 10 minutes. You have to sit there and you're like praying to God you get there. It's like running a red light, or not running a red light, but hitting the green lights. You're hoping and praying, but they change things and stuff like that, and we all know that, and so from my number two best, I'm gonna go back to what I was talking about, my number one worst, and that, surprisingly enough, is Star Wars Galaxies. So my number one disappointment is Star Wars Galaxies. It made both lists. You were right, Patrick. It did. It's my most favorite game of all time, and it's the game that probably hurt me more than anything. So Patrick had discussed a little bit of it just to kind of give you more of an understanding. We went to bed one night. We woke up the next day, and the first initial installment was they dumbed down the combat. And so what they did this. I can't remember. It wasn't the NGE, but it was the first one. And what they did was they took all of the ability to become Jedi and turned it into a mission quest type of situation. So however many holocrons you had done, and just to give everybody a little understanding, a holocron is kind of like a Jedi book. You open it up, it tells you what to do, whether to be a bioengineer, and understanding they had 33 classes at this point in time. So you had to master each of these professions for whatever the holocron was asking you. You get to a certain point where they would basically be hidden or secret, so you had to open them all up. Then once you got them all, then you became a Jedi, and there was only, maybe 2 dozen Jedi the whole time at this point in time. So become a Jedi, it was a big deal. And then they did this thing to where they completely wiped that out, and all that work that we had done to become Jedis was kind of like almost like a stat squash. They moved you back in the chain. So that was the first change that we had. And so then we had to go do this series of quests to become Jedi, but we didn't really understand exactly what part of the quest we were at. And then when we did understand, we realized, holy crap, we're going to have another 6 months before we can be Jedi. And so that was the first hit on us. And then shortly after that, that was when those actual new game enhancements came back. They dropped from 33 classes to 9 classes. The queue system was over. And what I'm talking about, a queue system, is you could queue your attacks. All those things happened. People were literally protesting in the game. Like, no joke. They would have mass groups of people burning these servers down in areas protesting, to the point where the people that ran the servers would literally teleport these protesters to other cities in the game. They would literally move them and send them somewhere else. It was atrocious. It was awful. I mean, we're not even, when I go back to the best part of it, we're not even discussing the crafting and the economy in the game. The economy was completely self-sufficient. This is a game where, like in Eve, where, a corporation can own a server or something like that. It wasn't like that here. Everybody needed everybody. It was like a very much a capitalistic type of thing, where you went to the best vendor who had the best guns, who had the best stems. All that stuff was there, and overnight, in one night, they completely ruined that game. So I don't want to go too far onto a tangent. I'll let y'all talk a little bit more about it, but it definitely made both of my lists.
Yeah, I don't know if Shane or Nick, you guys played this game, but I remember playing it early when it came out. I played the beta. I have the beta disc still for this game, where they would, because it was back in, a long time ago when it came out, and they didn't actually have download. It was like 6 or 7 beta discs that I have for this game. But yeah, it was funny because, yeah, when we were playing, it was, the game, to become a Jedi, you basically had to do this storyline quest where you have to go and it was based on professions. You had to master certain professions that were locked. They were randomized for your character. So you would holocron farm, and the holocrons would tell you the 4 of the 4 classes that you need to master, and then after the 4th one, they would go what's called silent. The holocron would go silent, and you would need to find that one hidden class. So you had to master 4 holocron classes and then 1 hidden class out of the 33. So you have, you did 4, so you have 29 classes that your silent class could be. And once you mastered it, you would get a visit from I can't remember what it was, like a mysterious stranger or whatever. And
Yeah.
and Jedis were like a coveted thing. There was not many in the game, and it was something everybody strived for. I remember AFK macro and the crap out of all the crafting professions so I can get them out of the way when I wasn't gaming, and then reset that so I can reuse those spec points for something else. It was an awesome game and a cool concept. And even though you had to master you had to find that one secret out of 29 classes, it was still a fun game. We played so many times together where I'd be like, "Hey Russ, I need you to run this guy out to my harvesters because I got to do the crafting professions. So I had to drop all my combat professions." So he would run point for me. Well, he would kill all the NPC creatures while I went out to my harvesters and grabbed materials so I could set up my AFK macro and go to bed, and vice versa. It was a fun game, and yeah, and basically they killed it in the course of it felt like overnight, and it really kind of was, because once we realized the quest chain was based on you can only do so far every day, and you had to basically build faction, to do it. So it pretty much killed it. And then we came back when NGE was in full swing, and I don't even think we put 20 minutes into it before we were like, nope, I'm done. We're gone. So It was a heartbreak of a game. We played. Talk about a game that had no direction. When it came out, there was no dungeons, there was no end game. It was play style, go to all these different planets. It was just massive, but it didn't have direction. It didn't tell you to go to this planet to go reach this dungeon until further on, and they started adding things like the Death Watch bunker and the Geonosian caves and things like that, that you would go to. I remember on the group of servers we played on, Naboo had the best bazaar. You would go to this town in Naboo, and it had the most vendors, and you would spend a day basically shopping. I remember one time going, "Hey, I need a new pair of Vibro Knuckles," and I got all these credits, and so I probably spent 3 or 4 hours perusing all the shops in the booth looking for the best Vibro Knuckles,
Yeah.
for my character. And so it was one of those games where I don't know where we are now because we don't have anything like that, in my opinion, now.
A complete sandbox. It was a complete sandbox game. Like it's the definition of that. I mean, there was zero direction, and until really like Jump to Lightspeed came in, that DLC. There wasn't much content, if anything, that was actually added, and then that started to add a little bit, which gave it another awesome layer with space battling and being in a TIE fighter, and it was fantastic. But again, it turned into that disappointment. So I think as we say that horse has been beaten, but that is definitely one of my favorite and worst games. So that finishes up that worst list at number one. And so I may surprise somebody. I may not on this. My number one best game of all time is Half-Life. Half-Life was my introduction to PC gaming for the most part. Yeah, I told you I played some Doom, but that was just a little bit. When Half-Life came out and I had just got my very first true PC, I got Half-Life. I was Gordon Freeman. There was aliens, there was craziness, there was great dialogue, wonderful story. I found myself so immersed into that game, that I thought I was Gordon Freeman. And then to come and play that game, I probably played that game, for a month straight, 4 or 5 hours a night, just playing and playing and playing to get to the very end. To get to the very end and to have that choice. And I was like, I'm not going to join you. And I was dead. And I'm like, what? What? What just? I mean, that was just the greatest thing to me. Half-Life spawned things like Team Fortress, Counter-Strike, all those games that we played along with it. I mean, Counter-Strike is one of my favorite shooters of all time. It's on my honorable mention list, as a matter of fact. Getting into LAN parties and playing Team Fortress and those things. That game just spawned a whole different kind of gaming for me, and so that's my number one all-time favorite is Half-Life.
I hate to be that guy, but Half-Life was great, but there's many other games, I think even at that time that were better. Probably not as story better, but gameplay better, I would think. But that's just my opinion.
I would have to disagree with you, sir.
I know you
Yeah.
would, but you
So now
Half-Life was the best.
so now, Half-Life did a freaking pain in the butt thing with the
VR.
new one in VR. So Russ, you going to buy a VR headset so that I can use it too?
I mean, I played Half-Life 2. Half-Life 2 was good. It was kind of an updated version, but the problem with Half-Life 2 and like Half-Life, like what is it? What's the game?
Alex is the new one. Were you talking about the other one?
No, no, no. There was games that came out that during that time, like Dos Ex. What was that? What was
Deus
that one?
Ex.
Deus
Yeah.
Ex? Yeah.
Yeah,
Ex Machina.
that one first came out around that time too, and then that one kind of lost its luster for me as it upgraded, and so Half-Life kind of did the same too. I liked Half-Life 2, but I don't know. Maybe it's that nostalgia. Maybe it's that first game like that I really played that pulls me back to Half-Life and say, and then I played the second one. It's like, oh, yeah, this is okay. It's not bad. I don't know yet. I'm not really sold on VR. I know y'all have discussed that a little bit before. If we haven't discussed it on the podcast, we discussed it with us four. I don't know that I'm a big VR person. I've played a few of them in VR, but they're just, I don't know, they're just not, the game's just not the same. And the VR technology is still a little clumsy right now. And so maybe if it gets to be better, possibly. But for right now, I just want to keep Half-Life where it's at and where I enjoyed it.
Yeah. VR is a hot subject for us because I want to play Half-Life Alyx, but I can't afford a VR system. And there's only two games that I want to play that VR is the driving factor behind it. That's Half-Life Alyx and the Star Wars games, the Vader ones on. Yeah, but,
Vader Unleashed.
Yeah, but like Nick and Shane, they have PSVRs, which is probably the best price point to get into VR. It's the easiest and simplistic and cost-effective way. But I want Half-Life Alyx, which is not on the PlayStation, so I'm not spending the $600 to get my computer probably can't even handle VR now, so I have to buy a new computer and then get VR. So I really want to play Half-Life Alyx, and Half-Life. I'm surprised that Half-Life is your number one. I really, because I didn't even hear the game that you'll never shut up about on the list, which Freelancer. I didn't even hear that make anywhere on your list. So
Well, that was, Freelancer on my honorable mention list. I've got Freelancer, Counter-Strike, and Age of Mythology. Freelancer, I love that game a lot, but I also, compared to the five that I chose, it's just something that it's just not quite there in the sense of like the top five. Half-Life, Star Wars, WoW, Final Fantasy VIII, and Ghost. If you see them, you'll say to yourself, "Yeah, you have two MMOs," but I also have an action RPG. I've got a straight-up RPG, and I've got a first-person shooter. So each genre is just a little bit different. And then Star Wars Galaxy kind of had that freelancer-esque jump to light speed type of thing, and that was actually wonderful in Star Wars. So like Freelancer, very enjoyable game, but also it's just an honorable mention for me. Just like Age of Mythology. Age of Mythology is probably my favorite strategy game of all time. But I just couldn't put it in that top five list. I just didn't quite have it in me to put it up there.
Well, I wouldn't disregard anything on either one of your list. I mean, I could definitely see the pros and cons of all of them. I definitely was surprised by the Half-Life though, because you don't really talk about first-person shootery kind of games very much. Typically, it's some sort of a role-playing type of thing. But yeah, Half-Life is a great game, and it's right. But I was kind of surprised to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, we as a group, we play a lot of console gaming. Patrick knows me from PC gaming a lot as well, and first-person shooters on the PC I don't mind so much. I did struggle with Borderlands 2 a little bit on the PC, but that's just I think that was just because I was kind of in a transition with a computer at that time. I think it was just a little bit too old to play Borderlands 2, but I do like first-person shooters on the computer a little bit, but Half-Life was just that introduction to it. So yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of like whenever you guys talked about your top five, a lot of your guys' games were one-player games or experiences that you guys had. For me, I really love my MMOs, or I hate my MMOs, and so it's one thing that I'm missing right now is a solid MMO. Everything that's coming out now is either a rinse and repeat, or it's a Korean or Asian style MMO, which is that they're beautiful games, but they're not the way that I like to build a character through an MMO. It's not the style that I enjoy. Old World of Warcraft, Star Wars Galaxies, that kind of thing is what I would love to see come back, but I'm afraid that may never happen.
Yeah, it's definitely hard to pick a top five and a worst five kind of thing, because honestly, if I look back, there's some games that started me off in certain directions, like online. When it comes to online shooters, Rainbow Six for the original Xbox, that really got me hooked on online shooters. And of course, you got Halo and Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I mean, depending on how you want to look at your top five, I definitely see why you would have kind of a variety that you did.
Yeah, the MMOs were pretty strong in that one. A lot of time spent, a lot of money spent on MMOs. That's for sure.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. So there you guys have it. I really appreciate you letting me share that with you. I knew I was going to surprise some and really not surprise in others. I mean, I do talk a lot about specific things, but also, Shane and Nick are still learning a little bit about me because, everything we do is a lot of console, but Patrick knows there was a solid 12 years there. It was PC gaming all the way.
Yeah, lots of PC gaming. We played a lot of MMOs. Well, that was a good one. Yeah, definitely a good, interesting list there. Nick, Shane, you guys got anything you want to add about the list or any of the games on there that you disagree with or anything like that?
Nope. His Final Fantasy VIII should have been a little higher up, but you know what? I'm going to give him credit for it.
How about Nick?
Yeah. Yeah, I think Final Fantasy VIII should have been 6, but that's just me.
Hey, suck a butt.
But Half-Life, I do love Half-Life. I've played all Half-Life games. I played the expansions, the Opposing Forces, and Blue Shift, and I played through Half-Life and all the side games that were made from Half-Life, like Day of Defeat and Natural Selection, and there was one that was kind of like a Matrix style game where you could do like bullet time and stuff from Max Payne, and it was an online shooter too. And then Counter Strike, of course. And a lot of those games went on to be their own standalone games. I think Natural Selection went into Natural Selection 2. I don't know if that's still being played. I know Day of Defeat went into its own game, and so
I mean,
yeah.
Steam, for goodness gracious. I mean, Steam was birthed out of that.
Right. Yeah. And so, and Half-Life 2, I love Half-Life 2 as well. The only thing bad about Half-Life 2 is they didn't make episode 3. So
Well, that was a good list, and yeah, and we all look forward to hearing more from Russ as the new fourth flavor of our podcast. But that's all we have for you guys for today. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next episode.